Okay, so starting on this moss-covered tower, I did the window first. That's going to be 3 strands of 647, and you can just do a little straight stitch for the interior bars, which I like to start with, and then tiny back stitches all the way around the frame of the window. All right, next we're going to focus on filling in all of the stones that make up the side of this tower. And ignore these two kind of parts. Those are going to be the mossy parts that are covered on the wall. But I'm starting with 3 strands of 3861, and I'm going to start with this little stone down here, and I'm going to fill it in with a satin stitch. And this is similar to when we were doing these patches on the mushroom. You just kind of pick a direction and fill it all in with satin stitch in whatever direction you pick. Doesn't really matter if you go horizontally or vertically or go at kind of a diagonal, which is usually how I like to work for these kind of wonky shapes. As long as you sort of vary them as you're working and going along here, it will look good. So as you can see on this one, I am just sort of shortening up the length of my stitch each time as I come into this little tiny corner. So now I'm just ending off with a little tiny stitch right here to fill in this. And it doesn't have to fit the space perfectly. You can always work it around. So that I've got that one. I'll go ahead and fill in all the other ones that I do with this color and then show you on the video. It's also going to be very clear in the picture instructions, and then I will show you as I move along which ones I fill in, because we're going to do a couple more colors for the stones. Okay, so just to show you where we're at right now, I've got these somewhat filled in. So we've got this one, this one, this one, this one, and this one filled in with 3 strands of 3861. And then we've got this one, this little one, and this one filled in with 3 strands of 3863. And the remaining 3 little spots you're going to fill in with 3 strands of 779. And then we'll be done with the stones and we'll move on to the moss roof and the little patches of moss siding. And again, I have this broken down in the pictures in the PDF. So if you want to see like step by step which stones to fill in and which colors, I have it there as well. Okay, so for the sections of moss that are growing onto the wall here or through the stones, you're going to use 3 strands of 371, and you're just going to create a cluster of 1 wrap French knots to fill all of this space in. And I like when we can cluster our French knots because you don't have to worry so much about them being super perfect. You just sort of get in there and get them done. So this is a good chance to practice French knots. And you can really work in whatever way feels comfortable. I kind of just pick a spot to start and I just start filling. Just making sure that I get any empty space filled in with my French knots. So you're going to fill in this, and then we're also going to do the roof, but we're going to do it just a teensy bit differently. Now for the roof, you're going to stick with 3 strands of 371, but instead of 1 wrap French knots, we're going to switch it up and we're going to go to 3 wrap French knots. It'll help fill the space a little bit quicker and also just give a little bit of variation here from what's on the stone walls to what's on the roof. So again, you're just going to continue to fill in with clusters of French knots this space up here. You could vary it between 2 wrap and 3 wrap French knots, however you want to kind of get this whole space filled in. We'll get that all filled in and then we can move on. Okay, we're going to work on this little garden gate now. You're going to grab 3 strands of 3863 and we're going to use it for everything on the gate, but we'll start with these sort of side sections. So I like to start with the tall or the vertical posts, and those are just going to be a straight stitch. So I'll go back up here. Oops. Okay, there we go. And then I'll do this one. And then again, you're just going to do a straight stitch for the horizontal posts going across, and you'll just do them right over the vertical post you just made. And just pull kind of gently so it rests right on top there. You will repeat this on the other side when you get over there, and you can go ahead and just back stitch the archway to get to the other side, and then finish off with these posts over here, and then we will add in our beads. All right, I'm using one strand of ecru thread, but again, one strand of any light colored thread will work when we're doing our beading. And I'm using a beading needle, and I'm just going to add a rose gold bead where every dot is. I managed to fit quite a few around this archway here. If you don't want to put that many, if it's a little too busy for you, you can definitely do less. I just wanted it to kind of look like it was twinkling, had a little bit of magic to it. So go ahead and get those all added around our fence here. And then we'll do that flag garland next. Okay, let's do this flag garland. You're going to grab 2 strands of 3861 to start, and just do a back stitch across here. And while you're at it, since we already have this color threaded, you're also going to back stitch across this garland here. So go all the way to here and then all the way to here so that we can get that all done. Okay, so now to fill in these flags, we're going to alternate between 2 colors. I'm starting with 3 strands of 647 to fill in this one, and then you'll fill in the remaining 2 with 3 strands of 353. So I'm going to show you, again, we're doing this one and this one with 647, and I'm just going to show you how I like to fill these in. It's a horizontal satin stitch, and with this triangular shape, I like to start at the top. That's going to be like your longest stitch across, and you're just going to continue your satin stitch down, and essentially what you're doing is shortening the length of your stitch each time you go across so that you're filling in this triangle shape. And by the time you get to the bottom here, your stitch lengths will just be really, really, really tiny. So I'm almost to the point of the triangle. I'm just going to make a really short little stitch right there to end it out, and that's good. So I'll repeat that for this one over here, and then again, these remaining 2 flags will be 3 strands of 353 and that same horizontal satin stitch. Okay, we're going to fill in this tree trunk now. You're going to do it with the exact same way we did the tree trunk down here. It's 3 strands of 779, and it's going to be a back split stitch. So you'll make that one little straight stitch out to start, and then you'll come up a stitch length away and go back down midway through the stitch, splitting it right down the center. I like to work up this side and then also work up this side, and then kind of fill in on each until I get the whole thing full. So I kind of do a row here, and then one coming down here, another row going up in the middle, another row going up in the middle this way, and then see what I have left over in terms of space and fill here and here. Okay, for this little base right here, you're going to grab 3 strands of 3863 and just go ahead and do a horizontal satin stitch across. Should just take you a few stitches across to fill that in. You're going to go ahead and fill in the door here with 3 strands of ecru and a vertical satin stitch, just how we do with our other doors that we've worked on. And then you'll also do the window with 3 strands of ecru and just back stitch your way around, and then straight stitches for those interior bars. Okay, for the bottom half siding of this little house, you can use 3 strands of 647 and just do a vertical satin stitch. Sometimes when I'm doing satin stitch, I like to start with this little tiny straight stitch in the middle that's going to get completely covered. But what that does is it gets the knot in the back out of the way of where I'm trying to stitch at the top here. So that way when I come back up right here, I'm not running into a knot. So you'll just satin stitch all the way across this siding. Okay, then you're going to fill in the doorknob and the roof with 3 strands of 3863. You'll do a 1 wrap French knot and then a horizontal satin stitch, just being sure to work around that window. So once you have that done, we're going to come over here and work on this house, and then we'll do the beads last of this little set. Starting with the door, I'm going to use 3 strands of 948 and a vertical satin stitch to fill in this rectangular doorway. 3 strands, 948, and a vertical satin stitch. Just go from one side to the other. You're going to use 3 strands of 3858 to vertically satin stitch in the siding on this house and also add a 1 wrap French knot. Okay, so for the roof, you're going to alternate filling in each stripe with satin stitch, and you're going to use 3 strands of 779, which is our dark brown color, and then 3 strands of 3863. I was going to say 3861, but 3863 for the remaining stripes. Once you have that done, you can grab 1 strand of any light colored thread and go ahead and just add a rose gold little bead on top of each of these dots. Or again, really you can use whatever colors you like. For anything that's like twinkle lights in this pattern, I've been sticking with the rose gold. And then we will get this vine done over here next, and then we just have to move on up and do our top row. You're doing great if you're with me still. And this is going to be so cute when it's all done. Okay, so for this vine, I'm starting with 3 strands of 936, and I just back stitched up the whole vine here. And then I'm going to do a satin leaf stitch to fill in each of these leaves. So you're going to come up at the tip of the leaf, go back down about midway through the center of the leaf, and then you will come up to one side a little bit below the tip of the leaf, and then you're going to go back down through the center underneath your previous down stitch, and repeat that on the other side. And you're just going to repeat that, alternating sides until you have the whole leaf shape filled in. And you'll work your way back down the vine, filling in all the leaves. Okay, so there's one leaf all filled in. I'll let you go ahead and fill in the rest of the leaves. Last thing that can be fun to do here, if you want to continue that sort of sparkle look that comes from the baseline, is just go ahead and make that center line on the vine into a whipped back stitch with a strand of your shiny gold thread. So I'm going to go ahead and do that all the way up. Remember, you're just pushing the needle through underneath each stitch, and you're always starting from the same side every time. Just go all the way up like that, and then when we're done with that, we get to move on to our top row. Okay, welcome to the top row. This is our little Hobbit hole, our Hobbit hill, our Hobbit house. We're gonna go ahead and start with the big doorway here. You're going to use 3 strands of 3863, and we're going to individually satin stitch in every little section of the doorway horizontally. So I'm starting in the middle and I'm going to work my way out. Now, I just think this gives a nice look to the door. It kind of helps panel it out a little bit, give it a little bit more texture, but I know that it can be a little bit tedious to individually satin stitch in each section. So like you do this one, and then you do this one, then you do this one, then you do this one, then you do this one. So I'm going to give you a modification. You know, like when you do those exercise videos and they're like, follow so-and-so in the back for a modification. To which I'm usually like, yes, please. So I'll give you an embroidery modification. You could fill this door in vertically with a back split stitch. You could go around and work like this. You could kind of work following these sort of curves and just fill it in that way, kind of like we did with the tree trunk, back split stitch. Or you could maybe even just satin stitch in vertically or horizontally satin stitch in the whole thing rather than doing each individual panel. But I recommend, if you can take the extra time, to do each little section individually, because it just looks really cute when we finish it. So I'm going to be here for a while. I'm going to continue doing this, get this all filled in, and then we'll move on. Okay, once you get the door all filled in, you're also going to fill in each of the windows with 3 strands of your 3863 and just a back stitch and a straight stitch for the 2 interior bars. Once we're done with that, we're going to take 3 strands of 779 and we're going to make a 2-wrap French knot in the middle to make a little doorknob here. And we're also going to stitch a back stitch around the door all the way around. And then I also like to come in between each of the like little panels of the door and go ahead and run that back stitch down those panels to sort of separate them, and it just gives us a nice kind of woodsy look. Just to show you what I mean here, I went all the way up around the door and now I'm just coming in between these first 2 panels and I'm just going to run a little back stitch where the 2 sections meet. And I'll repeat that in between each section. Again, this is optional. If it's just something you'd rather skip over, you can totally skip over it and move on to the grass. But I like to add this part in. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is take 3 strands of 3013 and we're going to stitch in the hill of the Hobbit hole. And you're just going to use a back split stitch for this. If you're more comfortable with long and short stitch, I think that would also be a great stitch to use here, but I'm going to keep it a little more simple with the back split stitch. And I'm going to follow the line of the hill. So the first thing I'm going to do is make a back split stitch, go all the way here, and then I'll go back this way. So I'm going to be following the direction that the hill runs in. All right, so we're going to move on to the kind of flower garden that sits atop our little Hobbit house. And I'm going to start with this little leaf type right here. So that shows up here, it shows up again right here, and it shows up again on this side right here and here. So for that, you're going to use 3 strands of 647, and you can just back stitch up the middle stem. And for each leaf, we're going to do that kind of, the same kind of thing that we did for our leaves down here on the tree. We're going to do that sort of loop stitch variation or repeated straight stitch to make the little tiny leaf buds. So let me zoom it in here for you. I'll show you on this top leaf. I'm going to come up at the tip of the leaf, pull all the way through, make a down stitch at the bottom of the leaf, and pull. On that first one, you can really rest it all the way down against the fabric. But then when you come back up again at the tip of the leaf to kind of go over the one the stitch we just made, make a down stitch. I'm just going to kind of pull gently so that it just sort of rests atop it. It gives it that sort of fluffier, a little bit almost 3D look. And then I'm going to repeat that for each leaf. So you'll go ahead and do that for this one, this one, this one, and this one. Okay, next we're going to do the stems and the leaves on all of these like little flowers that have the lazy daisy petals on them. So this one here will fill in these leaves, this one, and then this one over here. And for the stems, you can just do a back stitch up the center of the stem, and we're using 3 strands of 936. And then for the leaves, you're going to continue with that satin leaf stitch that we've done a few times. Same one we did on the leaves on the vine over here. And you'll just do that for all of these. So you'll do that for this flower stem, and leaves. You can fill in these 3 leaves with the satin leaf stitch, these leaves as well, this little stem and these 2 leaves, and then this stem and these 2 leaves. Okay, so for our flower petals here, on the 2 taller flowers on either side, we did lazy daisy stitches for each petal with 3 strands of 3858. And then on these 2 ones coming off the stems on top of the Hobbit hill, we did 3 strands of 223 for each petal with a lazy daisy. And then for these ones that just come right out of the hill with no stem, that's going to be 3 strands of 435 and a lazy daisy stitch for each petal. We are going to put a bead into the center of each flower, but I want to go ahead and get these tiny stems done first, and then we'll do that. So for each of these little stems, I'm just using 3 strands of 371, and we're going to fill them in the same way that we've been filling them in throughout the pattern. You're just going to do a straight stitch, and then just cut that. There's a little gold strand peeking through. And then just a little repeated straight stitch, or just a tiny straight stitch off to the side. Okay, sorry, lost my thread there. Anyways, just a little straight stitch coming off from the side to make a couple little tiny leaf buds, and you'll repeat that all the way across for all of these little remaining stems that we have. All right, for this final step in the pattern, we're going to add some beads. We're going to do that same little 3 bead cluster effect on all of these little stems here. And this is what I like to call embroiderer's choice. You've done this whole pattern with me so far. You can make your own decision about what color beads you want to use here. You could mix it up. You could do a couple different colors on these little clusters. You could do the exact same thing I do. You can do it however you want. But for all the little ones, you'll do that 3 bead cluster effect. I'm just using some different colors for each little flower. So I'm doing the darker pink one here. And then I'm also going to add a bead to the center of each of these Lazy Daisy flowers. For that, I'm just going to do rose gold to keep it consistent. But again, use whatever color you wish. It's totally up to you. All right, so we'll get beads added here, get a bead here, 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 get a bead in the center here, here, and here, and then do your clusters here, 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 and here. Once you've done that, we are done stitching. All right, so this is where I leave you for this pattern. If you have never done one of my patterns before and you want to know about how to wash the stabilizer away or how to back the hoop, you're going to head on over to that video on YouTube and it'll explain all the next steps for you. But thank you so much for joining me on this whimsical, magical little adventure, and I hope that you will join me again for another one soon.